Hey guys, welcome to the second podcast of Blossom House. Last time we touched a little bit on family and relationships with the people around us, so today we're going to expand on that a little more. We're going to be talking about family, friends, and overall relationships with other people. So, to start off, why are personal relationships important to have in our lives?
I would say it helps you feel a little less lonely in this experience called life. So you're not completely isolated. You have some troubles. You can talk to other people about it. And I've been reading some stuff. If you have relationships with other people, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's just romantic, like platonic and familial, you'll feel a little bit less depressed. Like you'll live longer. So I guess it's better for your mental and physical health.
Yeah, so true. Back to your point, which is like the first thing you said about feeling less lonely. I think that was such a good example of that during the pandemic, where we basically had to stay home and we were isolated from like basically everyone, right? So at this point, I feel like a lot of relationships were put to the test. Whether or not you'd call up your friends, whether or not you'd like want to talk to them at all. I think that was like really put to the test during the pandemic since everyone was like really isolated from each other. I know a lot of family relationships were also tested, and yeah, I was wondering, what are your individual experiences with like your relationships during COVID?
Um, Well, that's sort of difficult, mostly because I'm the type of person who, like, I'm not a great texter. Sometimes I'll leave in the middle of a conversation, and you'll just be confused. You're like, okay, bye, I guess. Um, so it's hard because you don't always reach out, and it's not like it's. Hmm. I guess it did make family relationships a little better, I guess, for me, just because you're always in the same house and you're not going to work or going to school, and so you're always in the proximity, and so you're sort of forced to spend time with each other because you can't spend all day every day in your room. So there's that.
On the other hand, for me, like, yeah, at the beginning, we were doing a lot of stuff we usually didn't do, like talking to each other and going on walks. That sounds depressing, but like, we like after a while, we did get a bit sick of it because it was just constantly like the same day, the same routine. We were doing the same thing. As for like other relationships with friendships, it was hard because a lot of it was online, and at least for me, I'm not the type of person to text people on a regular basis unless they text me first. And I think I don't know how true that is for other people, but it's really hard not to maintain like a friendship or any sort of relationship when you don't have as much face-to-face contact because you just don't feel as connected to them. How about you
Yeah, that
guys?
is so true. I feel okay. Hold on. Okay, I found that over the pandemic, I got like much better as a texter because before it would take me months on end, not even months, like years to finish one single game of Battleship over iMessage.
Wow.
I think there were so many instances where the game just canceled out because I took so long to respond. Like I think I looked for half a year at some point. It was very bad. But now I have decided that I'm going to text better. I'm going to communicate better with other people. And I still haven't finished the game of Battleship, but we're getting close. Okay, we're getting close. It's a work in progress. Yeah. Also, in terms of my relationship with my family, I feel like over the pandemic, certain things were definitely more rocky since we had to spend more time together, and that kind of just exacerbated like all the conflicts we had before. Usually we can just let an argument sit for a long time without mentioning it since like we're all really busy people and we barely see each other as it is. But during the pandemic, we saw each other like a lot more often face to face. So a lot of times these conflicts like they just blew up, and that wasn't that fun. But like we also discovered a lot of things that we like doing together, such as hiking. We took like a lot more hikes together. At some point, I think I forced my dad, my brother, and my mom to come with me to look for cool rocks and like the river. So that was fun. So yeah, the pandemic definitely made a few things worse, but at the same time, like you also got to have like so many more revelations about yourself and like your relationships with the people around you that yeah, I think it kind of balances it out.
Mhm. I agree. Going back to the point about not reaching out and not being able to necessarily maintain those friendships. Um, like obviously, all of us have those people who we were friends with, and you sort of lose contact over time because you just don't see them. And so that's something I'm also recently like trying to rebuild because I told you guys the story last time of me hanging up the phone on an old friend that just called, but I'm trying to be better. Uh, and so it becomes difficult when like you don't know what sort of conversation to engage in with the people that you don't really know because I for one don't want to constantly be asking them about, hey, how is school going, hey, what are your plans for university, so I'll just literally I'll tell them a random thing that happened in my day, and then I'll just try to start a conversation through that.
Honestly, understandable because this is happening to me as well. I'm trying to connect with a lot of junior high friends that I've lost touch with, and on there's a lot of time when I'm like, I used to be really good friends with you, but now it's like I forgot what exactly made us click. Like we just have gone so long without talking to each other. It's really hard for us to relate to each other and like each other's like life experiences. Like even though we're both in high school, it's still a different thing. So I don't exactly know what's happening for them and vice versa. We can't really relate. So we try to like build that common ground and talk about like academics, but it's much harder to go on to other things because you don't know exactly where to start that conversation off of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think I read a post the other day that basically said that like a lot of your friends right now, like a lot of the time they're just kind of friends out of convenience because you see each other constantly all the time, right? And you have like all your classes together, you spend all your lunches together, and you're kind of just friends because like you're together, I guess. And there's really nothing better for you to do except be friends because there's no point to like, I don't know, get like a fist fight every second day with somebody you're next to. That's just like not fun. I don't think many people enjoy doing that. But like, yeah, that just really got me thinking. Like, how many of my friendships are actually going to last, even if we're not together, even if we're not like not sharing every other class together or spending every lunchtime together. And when we're actually like in different places, when we have to like rely on long distance communication and like not seeing each other for a really long period of time. Like, would many of them last at all? And that was like kind of depressing, but it's also kind of interesting when I look back at like a lot of my past friendships, especially my childhood friendships. I had this really close friend that lived just down the block from me, and basically every school we would just play together for like hours. Except now I barely talk to her anymore, which is kind of sad because like she's a great person. I really miss her, but I can't find like an excuse to just like DM her on Instagram or something and start a conversation, right? Like it's kind of awkward. But sometimes I wish that like I don't know. I wish that I could just reach out to the people I used to be friends with and like kind of just I don't know, maybe catch up on everything and see if like we can still be as close friends as we were back then.
Hmm. I agree. I also have a friend that um, like a childhood friend. We used to do everything together, and then we went to different schools. And you know how in the beginning you try to maintain that relationship, like you'll have a phone call once in a while, and you're really excited, and you tell them everything. But then over time, you just sort of like stop talking because, like, at least in my case, I was dropping out of the things like the extracurriculars that we shared because I didn't have time to do them anymore. And then so we actually go to the same high school now. But when I talk to her now, it's something my mom told me actually when we all were all in the room together. She was telling me how it was strange that we were so awkward around each other when we at one point used to be like the best friends ever, and how it was so strange to her that we could barely say hi to each other when we used to basically live off of each other as kids. So it's just I feel like it's just a sort of thing with growing up and getting used to how we're all changing as we're getting older, and we're all like learning what we like and becoming different people. And so we just have to get used to the idea that sometimes our relationships don't stay the same as we grow older.
On a different note, like different from like friendships changing, but also there are a lot of times when friends just stay friends out of convenience because it's easier to have a friend than be isolated in that sense. So you at least you have someone to be there, and you're it looks like you're part of a group, but at the same time, even though it looks to outsiders like you're in this really healthy and nurturing friendship, you can still feel isolated. And even if you're in a healthy friendship, there are times when you can feel isolated as well, which I think is natural and acceptable. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot after. Like, there was something about Emily's thing. It will come back to me.
It will come
I
back.
think it was about conflict resolution. Um,
Um,
yeah, how like in relationships, like there's often like there'll always be conflicts that come up, little or small, little or big. Like, how would you go about resolving those in a healthy way?
I think I have like different ways of resolving issues depending on like my relationships, right? For example, family relationships with my parents, we kind of just let it sit until it simmers down, and then we can like finally talk about it without like me crying or my parents yelling at me. So that's one way to do it. With my brother, we go straight to fist fight. He it's so funny. He has this Nerf gun, except it isn't a Nerf gun. It's like a Fortnite gun, and it shoots
Oh
bullets.
yeah.
So he sat on it occasionally and shoot bullets at me. And then he has
Oh,
another foam popper gun, which is like a gun that shoots foam balls, and the foam balls actually hurt because they're coming at you like pretty fast. So when he runs out of bullets on his Fortnite gun, he'll shoot that at me, and then I will like put him in a chokehold, but I'm not actually choking him. I can't choke out an 8-year-old. Um, but yeah, that's how we resolve our conflicts. We kind of go at each other until like we're tired, or we go at each other until we're even more mad. So I kind of get why it doesn't work that much. Yeah, as for like conflicts between friends, it kind of depends on what the conflict is, because I honestly can't remember the last time I had a fight with a friend. Like maybe I'm just not a very I can't find the word for it. Like
conflicting.
Aggressive.
Why did I think conflicting? Yeah, aggressive. You're calm.
aggressive person. Yeah, like I don't start fights with people. Like I try not to, but yeah.
Honestly, me too. Like, even though I feel like I have a very like hyper personality. I don't get into fights that often. I mean, we do like me and my friends do have small disagreements. My biggest disagreements are honestly with my parents, but for like with friends, whenever that happens, we do try to talk it out and find the root of the problem. And if there's ever a big disagreement or like there's a problem with something we're doing, like a behavioral problem, then ideally you would hope for the person to come talk to you and you guys would have a discussion about why the behavior is problematic. You try to change it, and same goes for them. Like, you want to be comfortable in any relationship and you can like trust the other person. It's like a balanced relationship. In terms of parents, that's usually when it's like, at least for me, the most tense, the most sensitive, because their beliefs and views really matter to me, and I hope, like, I'm sure my views matter to them as well. So when they conflict, it's really hard to find that middle ground and how to make things work. So when it's in the heat of the moment, it gets really bad and we do blow up at each other. But we try to take some time, and then afterwards we would like talk to each other calmly and be like, okay, this is my point of view. And then they would talk about their points of view, and we would try to find a compromise. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it's much better to like reflect back after some time, is what I found.
I feel like the way that conflicts are solved and are even started is like it's based on your power dynamic, right? It's like with your friends, you're on the same power level, so it's just it makes more sense for you to go and talk it out because like you're on the same foundation to be able to find a solution. It's different with parents because a lot of the times, especially when you're like still a kid. Like it's easy for parents to just be like, I know what is best for you, and you are just a child. And like, yes, you have an opinion on it, but also I have a more experienced opinion. And so, like, as a parent, I can tell you what to do, sort of thing. And it's there's a certain age where kids begin to voice their opinions and like stand up for what they want. Um, and I feel like it's really up to the parents to decide whether they're going to allow their child to make those choices for themselves or not.
I think for parents and just elders in general, it can be very disconcerting to be talked back to because there's this culture of if you're someone who's like in the age hierarchy, like you're older, then you're always supposed to be shown respect. But then again, that doesn't always mean just because you have a certain age, you're always right and you are always deserving of respect. So I think behavior definitely plays a role in that.
Yeah, I think for all of our cultures, like we always have this thing where it's like super important to respect your elders, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, they generally know better because they have a lot of experience. But at the same time, yeah, I totally agree. They're not always right. Sometimes I would say that I know better than my parents, but sometimes like the issues that I am dealing with, like they haven't been through the same thing because of like how different the countries are, right? My parents grew up in China. I'm growing up in Canada right now. Like not only the countries so different, like the time periods are also really different too. So like sometimes their experiences aren't necessarily reflective of what I'm going through right now, which means that like their advice might not reflect the same thing that I would do. And I think it's really important to find a balance between like your parents' experience and like what you know right now, because you can't just go off of what they went through. It's going to be really different. And you also can't go off of what you think is right because a lot of times I'm wrong. Like I'm wrong a lot of times.
Me too.
So yeah, I think it's just really hard to come to that balance, even though I know like I should be going to that balance. Yeah, you you can know how you can like strike that balance between listening to your parents and also having your own ideas.
I think it's also like it's difficult because you don't really know who's right because like you can't tell the future, right? You don't know which decision is going to be the best for everyone. Um, and it's also like sometimes I think about it is that if we were in our parents' positions and we also want what's best for our children, like there are some times where I'm like, yes, I would definitely make the same decision as my parents, but as a child, I disagree with that decision, if that makes sense. And so it's like you're the things that you want for your child as a parent are different than what your child wants in the moment. And so you just have to like it's hard to reconcile whether which one's more important. Like maybe it's someone's safety, maybe it's like someone's choice of wanting to do something and giving them the freedom to do it. Like there's a lot of things that are going into conflicts, especially with parents. So it's a very difficult thing, I think.
Mm. Huh. If I mean, okay. Not sure. I don't have any other thoughts on this. Should we move on to talking about healthy and unhealthy relationships? Specifically, unhealthy
Wow.
relationships. What characterizes them? Unhealthy relationships. We can do like a sort of compare contrast sort of thing.
I know that you mentioned before about like sometimes you're in friendships and you feel isolated, and sometimes that's not necessarily anyone's fault. But I feel like at least I've been on both sides of this in friend groups where like sometimes you just don't feel like um, the people around you are putting in the same effort as you are in order to maintain that friendship and like sometimes it's not anyone's fault, and sometimes it's like it is. And at that point, you have to figure out if it's worth keep trying to keep that friendship when it's clear that the other person isn't putting in the same effort um, as you are. And that's the point where you have to sort of decide that the friendship is doing um, more harm than good and cut it off.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think a really important part of like a healthy relationship is the communication aspect, right? You have to be able to communicate your feelings and your emotions to your counterpart in that relationship, and they should feel safe to do the same back to you. So a lot of times when we don't see like the same level of communication being maintained in a relationship, that's where it begins to like go into unhealthy rather than healthy. Because if you're not able to communicate, then you really don't know what you're doing wrong, if you're doing anything wrong at all. And you wouldn't know how to improve your relationship based on the feedback that your counterpart is giving you. So I really believe that unhealthy relationships can be worked eventually into a healthier one, but it takes like a lot of effort and a lot of communication. So, yeah, I just really think that communication is like super super important. Basically, any relationship at all. Yeah.
And on that communication part, I think it has to be from both sides as well. It can't just be one person doing all the work because, a relationship involves many, well, two people in this case. Then they have to have honest communication. Another part of a healthy relationship, I guess, would be that we try not to control the other person. Like they can make friends with other people. They can honestly do whatever they please. There are times like maybe they might be doing something dangerous. In that case, I still don't think it's right for us to really like control their behavior. I guess we could advise them as their friend, but it's still not our place to force them into anything else. Like this whole idea of control, like as in a friend or platonic relationship or even familiar relationship, like I don't know, should there ever be any element of control in a healthy relationship? It's hard to say.
I mean, I guess that's the whole point of there are laws around like power imbalance and power dynamic relationships, right? Because you don't want anyone in a relationship to have the power to coerce or control what the other does. So I feel like the best relationships, whether that's family or friends or like romantic relationships, it's when you're on an equal playing field. So you can't really have open and honest communication or a completely healthy relationship if your power dynamics aren't equal. It's a little different when it comes to parents, but other than that, you, I feel like it's really important to maintain that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from having mutual respect for each other. Because if you don't have any respect for your partner, then I don't think that's a very healthy relationship because you basically don't value their worth and you don't see them as your equal. And I think that's really where the power dynamics come into play and like the control comes into play because fundamentally you don't respect them as a person. You don't think that they're equal to you. And basically that like just leads you to, I guess, want to control them, want to exert any like sort of power over them. And yeah, I think relationships as a whole are like built on trust, communication, respect. Let me know if I'm missing anything. I'm my brain's empty.
I completely agree with you. On kind of a different note, I see this a lot in children because I this happened to me as well. When I was younger, I would really get like I don't know the emotion, I guess jealous when like a really close friend of mine would like stop hanging out with me and hang out with another friend. In that case, like what would you do then? Like I it kind of sometimes it even happens to me now, but not to the same degree. Like I don't I just kind of I'm just kind of like bothered like oh, like I used to be really close now. it's like it's sad that I'm not as close to them anymore. In that case, like what would be the best way to go resolving that? Like would you talk to the friend? Like has
I
this
mean,
happened to you?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like any time that I've ever been in that position, I've always felt like I didn't really have a right to say anything because I don't own them, right?
Mhm.
Like they can have their own friendships outside of mine, and like just because they're spending less time with me doesn't necessarily mean that like our friendship is any less strong, right? And so most of the time that I've honestly felt whenever I've felt jealous, I just feel guilty for feeling jealous because like I mean you're allowed to feel what you feel, but also I feel like you can't really it's not your right to tell them that you should spend less time with other people, you know?
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
agree. I mean, like, I guess for me, I would just be like, can we possibly, like, I don't know, if we're never hanging out, then I'd be like, hey, let's go to this place together for a weekend just to catch
Mhm.
up. I think that would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, Emily,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
To
interrupted you.
Ruthie's point.
No, I did it again. Okay, keep going.
Okay. To Ruthie's point about like you're allowed to feel jealous sometimes, you're allowed to feel emotions. I think that sometimes you have like this the irrational voice inside of you that is basically like exacerbating your fears of abandonment. It's like, yeah, they don't like you anymore. They're going to ditch you and hang out with somebody else instead. And like, I don't know, for me, a lot of my friendships, when they started hanging out with somebody else, like that little voice would keep saying that, and I was like, "You're stupid, shut up." But yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
it's like telling that stupid little voice inside your brain to shut up because no, if your friendship is healthy and if you genuinely like each other, then I don't think there's any reason why they should like ignore you forever and hang out with that other person, right? Sometimes you're just jealous because you just like are really scared of being abandoned by your friend, and sometimes those fears aren't reality, and if they're not reality, then like feel free to just tell that little voice to shut up, basically.
Yeah, sometimes our
Yeah.
brain goes out of control. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is like another note. It's something that I've heard like people someone I was listening to talk about how one of the important things in a relationship was sacrifice. And that's not necessarily like a big sacrifice. It's like you have to be willing to compromise in a relationship in order for things to work. Because obviously you're not going to align in every single way. And so if you want to maintain a relationship, you have to be willing to like give up little things in order to sort of like bridge that gap, whether that means giving up time that you would normally be doing something else to spend time with them, or like giving up a certain thing that you used to do because it's changing for that dynamic. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you also have to decide whether like what's more valuable to you, the thing that you were doing before or the things that you get out of um, being in that friendship or that relationship. So it's really just like up to what you decide is important.
Hmm. But on the same note, I feel like it's really different to expect somebody else to give up like parts of their day or parts of like what they think is important to them to be with you or to like give you something, because that's I guess you should just be doing that, right? Because other people have a life outside of their relationship with you, and to expect them to like give up what they think is important, like sports practice, for example, I think that's really unreasonable of them to do, because sacrifice is something that should be given like willingly instead of just to meet like an expectation. Because if it's to meet an expectation, then it's not really sacrifice. You're just being really, really demanding.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, as for expectations in relationships, I'm not really sure what expectations there should be. Like, I don't think you should be expected to sacrifice anything for your friend. personally, like if you have extracurriculars, you should be able to do those. I think some of the expectations would be like being open and honest with them. But even that has its extents. Like maybe there are some things you're just uncomfortable with talking about, and that takes time as well. It's different for each relationship. Um, what are some other expectations that might be in a friendship or relationship? Any relationship. It doesn't have to be a friendship.
For romantic relationships, my one expectation would be don't date somebody else while you're dating me.
Okay, understandable.
That
Unless you're
was very low hanging fruit. I'm
in
True.
sorry.
that case, go ahead. I don't know. I can't really. It sort of depends on your
The
relationship,
relationship.
doesn't it?
Mhm.
Like you always set your own boundaries in whatever relationship you're in, and so the expectations in regards to that is something that you set for yourself, right? So it's something that differs within each thing. I guess universally, the most important thing is to just respect those boundaries and like the unofficial rules that you set for yourself within your relationships.
Hmm. I mean, I don't have anything else to say for expectations in a relationship. Uh, well, I guess when talking about family, it's hard to talk about expectations because, like, it's because of that power dynamic, like you mentioned before. So there's different expectations. Like, I mean, like your parents expect you, at least for me, like to do well, but at the same time, they also like expect you to be happy. I guess that's not an expectation, like expecting you to
They
be
want you
happy.
to be
They
happy.
want you to
Yeah,
be
they want
happy.
you to be happy. And then I guess for parents, like children will generally like expect them to like care for them, like
Feed me.
feed me please. But also
Mhm.
like both like I parents like kids would expect like love and nurturing, right? Like different things. I don't know about
Completely
romantic relationships
unrelated.
because I've never been in one. So, yeah, can't comment on that. Sorry.
Completely unrelated, but this just reminded me of this Garfield quote that was like, love me, feed me, never leave me. And like, oh, family expectations.
Honestly, feed me. That's the most important. Honestly, the way wait, what is that quote? Like the way to the heart is through the stomach, something like that. Yeah,
Something like
that's for
that.
me.
If we want to like circle back to sort of conflict resolutions with um family and siblings, um you're sort of like that those expectations play a role in that, right? Like I feel like for friendships, the way that conflict rolls out is a lot different than the way conflict rolls out with families or siblings because like Emily said, with family you when you get into a fight, a lot of the times you can just let it sit and then you just like you're just wordlessly apologizing. And sometimes it's like you'll hand them like a cup of fruits after and you'll be like, yep, we are done fighting. And so I feel like that's just the thing with family because I think at least with family there's okay, not necessarily an obligation, but it's like you know that they love you and that's not going to change, or hopefully that's not going to change if you're in a healthy family. But in terms of friendships, it's like you build those by yourself. You don't come into this world with those ties already set. And so in some cases they're a lot more flexible. And so the way you deal with conflict there is a lot more tenuous because you have to go and take that extra step um, in order to keep things good because you can't just let it sit and be like, hey, we're okay because we are family and we love each other, you know?
um, yes, I
I am
agree.
thinking, I promise.
Yeah, I'm thinking too. Hmm.
Okay, well, if we're stuck, so let me ask you guys about your siblings. Specifically, how are your relationships with your siblings?
To be honest, for me, it's pretty good because I feel like my brother is actually more emotionally mature than and mentally mature than I am. Even though there's like a four year age difference, he's younger than me. But it honestly, like, I we just get along. Like we talk to each other. We're really like friendly. We don't actually fight that often, which I hear is pretty rare for siblings. So like most of the time we don't always hang out like, but pretty frequently we're like doing stuff like like cooking pasta together. So when we have fights, when we do have fights, it gets really bad. Like I will not apologize to him and he will not apologize to me until our parents force us to apologize to each other. So, when you're apologizing to someone, it really should be out of your heart. You should not have someone trying to force it
Mhm.
out of you because it does not. You just get more stubborn and it doesn't feel like genuine. But at least for me and my brother, like after a certain point, we're like, okay, yeah, I was being very, very bad, very stupid. Please forgive me, and then it just goes back to normal. So
I can only think of like a couple times that me and my brother have legitimately apologized to each other, and we really only apologize when we do something that was
very
like
bad.
bad.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like all siblings fight at some point.
Mhm.
And like if that turns physical, that's not necessarily like an abuse thing. It's more like
We are
we're
so
siblings
angry.
and we're gonna beat each other up because that's what
That's
we
how we
do.
do it.
So
Um,
true.
and so like sometimes if the things that we say when we're angry or the things that we do when we're angry, if that's actually like we can tell that we hurt them, then that's when we apologize. But most of the time, like me and my brother, we have a 5 year age gap. He's older. Um, we mostly just like if we're angry, we'll just go to our own rooms, and then it'll be like 2 hours later where he'll come in and be like, "Hey, do you want to watch Naruto?" And I'll be like, "No, get out." And then we're like,
Oh my god. I relate to the get out part a lot. Yeah.
Sick. Yeah, the age gap between me and my brother is like actually pretty big. We're 9 years apart. He is 8 right now. I am not 8. I am 17.
Wow.
Yeah, so
"I
that's
am
a
not
pretty big age gap. And we are constantly fighting. I don't know if like we're supposed to fight less as the age gap gets bigger because like they're tiny and you're not, and like what is there to fight about? But he's honestly just a menace. Like he is. Oh
Describe
my gosh,
menace. What do you mean by this?
he is a menace. I don't even
Okay.
know. I'm trying to think of like examples, but there's so many. Recently, he has been playing this game of slap the butt. So he is going to
what?"
walk up to literally any person in the family and just like slap our butt, and he's gonna run away laughing, and we're like, Michael, don't do that, but he does it anyways. And then I talked about his guns, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has guns and he shoots them. Sometimes he'll finish dinner earlier and he'll go to the couch, he'll load his gun and he'll start shooting. It's like pew 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 pew. And we're like, Michael, don't do that. We're trying to eat. And he's like, no.
Just without context, and you're like, "He has a gun." Pew pew pew. We're trying to eat. Please stop. They mean
Oh my
fake
gosh. So like,
like
Nerf guns.
foam guns, guys. It's okay.
Yeah, we don't condone gun violence unless it's Nerf gun violence. But yeah, there are also more stories, but I won't be getting into those because honestly, I don't think I can. This is like a PG podcast, right? Like,
Yeah.
won't get into that.
Oh god. Understandable.
But yeah, he's a menace. I think I've shown you examples of how he's a menace. But yeah, he's a menace, and we're constantly fighting. And a lot of our fights are like actual fist fights, except I can't actually like go to town with him because he's 9 years younger than me. Um, but he'll shoot me with his guns. So yeah, I have a great relationship with my brother.
It's interesting how you guys aren't like because of the 8 year or with my no 9 year age gap, right? It's
nine
hard.
years.
It's probably like a bit hard to relate. Is that
It
true?
is.
Yeah. Well, for me and
It
my
is.
brother, I mean, 4 years is still pretty far apart, but we're able to like communicate with each other. Like because I've been through his, like, we've been to the same schools and everything. Like, I know exactly what he's going through, and he somehow knows what I'm going through too. Like, we just talk a lot about our problems, and you like we're also very aware of what our parents are going through. Like we don't have, like, our distant family, we don't exactly have the closest relationship with them, so we understand the struggles they're going through and the losses they faced in their family, which kind of leads me onto another tangent about, like, when your parents or other people, other relationships you have, those other people are going through loss and grief. How do you handle that? Because recently, this is just a kind of side note, like, one of my, I don't know, I guess it's a grandparent, but it's not a direct grandparent. It's like a aunt's father, I guess.
Uncle B.
Yeah, so he's some grandparent, right? Like, he passed away. I didn't know him well, so I couldn't exactly relate to the loss on the same way as my parents did, and I didn't know how to comfort them. Like, what do you say when you lose someone? Like, what do you say to them when they're grieving? I wasn't really sure what to say. So, in those instances, how can you help whoever it is, like, whether it's a friend, it's a romantic relationship, whether it's your family, your siblings, like, what can you do then?
I actually have no idea because like my family isn't the type to really share our emotions. Like we really keep it to ourselves a lot. I think it was like a long time ago. I don't even know when, but my grandmother on my mom's side died, right? But my mom, since I was like really young at that time, she kind of just kept to herself. I wasn't there for the funeral. I actually didn't even know that she died until like what 5 years later. But yeah, I think that just really shows like my family just keeps their emotions to themselves a lot. We don't really talk about it. Sometimes, like when I'm going through a hard time, I don't really think that my parents would be able to help with it a lot, which is kind of sad. But like, it's just how our family works, right? We keep our emotions to ourselves. But yeah, I'm sorry, I really don't know how to help you with that.
Yeah, me neither, honestly. When my grandfather died, and like obviously my parents are gonna feel differently than I am, but it's like the things that I did was basically just I just sat with my dad for a while, but I couldn't really say anything because I didn't really know him very well. So it's like you just sort of be there for them. And it's harder when it's a parent because like parents usually hide when they're sad because like they don't want to put their burdens onto their children. So just like sitting there, giving them a hug, um, sort of just like that being in their space sort of thing. That sort of helps, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think there's really a straightforward answer on how to deal with grief. It you have to allow it to take its process, like, take the time, whatever time it needs. Definitely try to be there for them. Yeah, it's a heavy topic. We're still going through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, in general, wrapping up the podcast, relationships are complicated and very hard, and there's no one way to go about doing it, but just like make sure that you're communicating, that you're setting boundaries, and that when things are hard or conflicts happen, that you just like talk them out.
Completely agree with this. See you guys next time on whatever our podcast is going to be. Podcast 3. Bye.
Podcast
Bye.
3.
Yes,
Bye.
podcast 3. Thank you.